children in foster care into the system.
Are you aware
that thus affects them and causes scarring against the women that have to make that choice?
There are 2 million families who would like to adopt a newborn baby and they can't.
Okay, are you helping them? Because if you're providing resources,
we do promote and help them. But you know what?
So
you know the reason why they
100,000
can't adopt. The reason they're not able to adopt is because we have 1 million abortions a year. Our country kills children.
If there were access to safe abortions, I would say that scarring exists.
And those are all legal
abortions.
To be clear, those 1 million abuations a year are all being done legally.
You're Catholic, right?
I am
Are
Catholic.
you not going to feel Catholic guilt when all the women are dying in parking lots from illegal abortions?
So women are dying right now from legal abortions. Women who take the abortion pill, 30,000 of them are going into the emergency room every year because of the abortion, the legal abortion pill.
Doctors are now in fear of malpractice.
The media is lying to you guys. The media is lying to you guys because legal abortion kills women. It killed Tanya Reeves in a Chicago Planned Parenthood.
I have a lot of friends who had abortions. They're live. I was talking to them yesterday. They're pretty chill. They're actually pretty great. They're in therapy because they made that choice to have children when they are ready to have children.
There's tens of thousands of women who go to emergency rooms because of the abortion pill. There are dozens of women who die from
if they had safe access in education, sex education early on,
those were
women and men
legal abortions that they were having.
Men and women would have access to education to understand sex.
You've been voted out by the majority.
Okay. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Those stories usually aren't. Those stories aren't usually made or told by typical media groups. Usually in media and in the entertainment world, you hear the stories of the women that are saying abortion is great, it empowers me. There are thousands and thousands of women who experience bitter abortion regret. And then there's also
women can have abortions and they want to have kids in the future, but they know that they're not in the position for it right then and now, so they can have guilt, they can feel sorry, but that's not all women, and that's totally valid.
I think there's a stigma today, if I may, I think there's a stigma today on a lot of women that they can't share their abortion regret because society is telling them that abortion's your right, it's empowering, it's a reproductive freedom, and so if you have abortion regret, there's not really a space to share that.
Stigma, you're feeding into the harmful narrative.
What harmful narrative?
That women are getting abortions and then that they shouldn't feel regret about it because they're murderers and that they should own up to their actions. That's what the pro-life people are arguing.
I think what our narrative, if you want to call it that, is to say this is a human life. The science tells us this. It's always wrong to take a human life, and abortion does leave deep scars on a lot of women. Thank you. What's your name?
Hi, nice to meet you. My name's India.
India, nice to meet you.
Okay, so it's funny. I didn't believe in God a couple years ago.
That's great that you're going to church.
Thank you. And you know, the decision that I made maybe wasn't the thing that I 100% wanted to do. It was definitely something.
What do you mean? Did you feel pressured to have the abortion?
No, absolutely not, because everybody around me was in support of whatever I did, especially my mother and especially the father of the child. But I didn't feel pressured at all. In fact, I felt as if it was harder to make the decision based on how I'm gonna feel. Exactly. And as you're saying, women are scarred from this. I don't feel scarred. I definitely have an effect from it, but I don't think that saying this procedure scars women for life, because you don't know what I'm going through up here. Absolutely not. I don't care who you are, what you stand for, what organization you're behind.
I'd love to respond to what you're saying.
You don't get to judge me.
I'd love to respond. The flags are going up and I'd love to respond before you go.
But you know, my whole point is you have absolutely no idea what people go through.
So I understand you're experiencing and you're telling me your experience, which is important. Everybody's experience is important.
Absolutely.
A lot of the women that I've had the privilege of talking to, their abortion wasn't yesterday. Their abortion was a couple years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. As you get older, you get more established in your life. You're a young woman.
And I'm not saying that that's not going to affect me later down the line, but what I am saying is
that's the key, right? Because we make big decisions, right? Yeah. Especially when we're young, we can make big decisions. They have an effect down the line. And so my advocacy is to saying, this is a big decision. This is a human life.
But is it your right to make the decision for me or to say what decision is right? Because God is the only one that can
on an abortion. And she says, will the abortion take away the trauma of that? The horror I feel in my body.
But that's her choice, though. But that's her choice.
Said, let me just finish what she said. And the doctor said, no, it will not. He was honest with her. And she said, why would I take the life of this baby because of the trauma that I endured?
Not everybody will experience.
It's a belief, but it's also a fact that it was a human being inside her. It was an innocent third party because of that.
So
that was perpetrated upon her.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Hi, what's your name?
Jax Prince. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm Lila.
So, based off, you've given incredible points, genuinely and truly. I'm learning quite a bit.
Thank you.
So, for the people that you say have the abortion young, how old do I look, out of curiosity?
You You're never supposed to answer that, right?
No, go ahead. By all means.
Will you tell me you'll do me if I do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
deal.
All right. You are 25.
I appreciate that. Add about 10 more years. So
Okay.
by
You
your
look
logic,
awesome.
thank you.
You look amazing.
By your logic, I should be in that age range of people who abort, let's say, who should be feeling the regret and everything. If I had carried to term, I would be labeled a drug-addicted Black mother, and if I had kept the baby, I would have been
Delivery, but we would never have to intentionally kill the baby to deal with the health risk for the mother.
Medically necessary, right?
So correct. And so as an example, your friend, right? You said she had a late-term abortion because her baby had a health issue and was going to die, and then otherwise she would have an issue. The doctor, and Dr. Anthony Levatino as an example, could have done an early delivery to give that baby a chance at life instead of intentionally killing that baby in
I don't
utero,
understand
which
how
is what
you
an
can
abortion
sit
does.
here across the table
There are thousands of
and
medical
tell me
professionals
what
who fight for both the life of the baby and the mother.
You can't tell me what my best friend's mother could have had done to her.
She
you weren't there.
deserved better medical care. She deserved better medical care than what she was told.
deserved
That it was
to be able
unfair
to
and wrong
have a
what she was told.
choice, and
she wasn't given a choice.
She was given a
No,
choice.
they told her you're gonna die. They told her you have to have this abortion. That's what they told her.
Informing her
deserved a
medically,
high-
she cannot deliver children if she had not had that abortion.
Did you know
so
that?
why do you think that
when
she
there's
should have a
just to be
forced
clear, in a late-term abortion, you have to remove the baby, right?
Yes.
And what is the difference between a late-term abortion where you remove the baby dead and an early delivery where you can remove the baby alive? One is an abortion and one is a life-saving act. What she deserved was a life-saving act for both her and that baby. And an early delivery could have been what she needed.
I agree because she wanted that child.
And that's why it's devastating that they told her that. It's wrong that they told her that.
No, but they were right.
Else you say that.
That's time.
I appreciate that, but you're not a doctor and you weren't her doctor.
There's thousands of medical professionals who say you can care for both mother and baby.
That's fine, but it's you.
Can doctors be wrong?
Doctors can be wrong. Can you be wrong?
Could her doctor have been wrong? My next claim is abortion cannot be justified under any circumstance.
Hi, great to meet you. Lila?
Nice to meet you. What was your name?
Mason.
Mason, nice to meet you.
So a couple things. First, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to make a lot of assumptions about your organization. I don't know the specifics. But when you say alternatives to abortion, I assume that you're saying philanthropic assistance when it comes to helping people with pregnancy or start families. Is that true?
Yeah, promoting options that are not killing the baby, basically. So
okay, well,
that could be
without that
parenting
moral language,
the baby,
I do,
adopting the baby.
Yeah, and I think that's valuable to a lot
Yeah.
of people, especially if they don't have the economic means in order to start a family. So I want to commend you on that.
Yeah.
When it comes to the policy proposals that you propagate as an organization, I would say that those don't help anybody, especially when it comes to just adding punitive measures
Are
to
you
either
familiar
women.
with our policy proposals? Because we
I'm
support
gonna
making
assume-
birth free. Do you support making birth free?
Yeah, I think that'd
We
be great.
support.
Do you support
more
access
cash-
to contraception?
We support more cash credits for families who have kids so that they can invest back into their families and take better care of you.
One sec, I got to finish my point.
Okay.
What I will say is the rights of people's bodily autonomy is something that supersedes the preservation of life, especially when it comes to the government enforcement of that.
Do I have
So
the
one
right
quick-
as a
one quick
mother to
thing.
kill my child?
So I think there are two ways that we determine what rights are in a society, right? It's either we all have rights and then we decide as a society that there are some actions that we need to restrict just because we live in a social world, or we have no rights and we just have the grace of the government that grants us some rights.
I have a question
What
for you,
I would
Mason.
start
Yeah.
is I think that we do have all rights. I think that we restrict things that would be unnecessary and bad. I wouldn't count somebody's rights to their own
So
bodily
it sound-
autonomy as something that we need to
So
restrict.
it sounds like you're saying, making the argument that dependency means that a mother should have the child to end the life, should have the right to end the life of her child.
I wouldn't say dependency because I'm sure
the
you're-
child's dependent on her body, right? That's
well,
what you're saying.
I'm assuming you're
The
going to go into like a
dependency.
toddler is dependent in order to be
Well,
fed by their parents.
A newborn
And-
is totally dependent on their
Right,
parents,
but it
it's
doesn't
not-
rely-
We can never end the life of a newborn.
I know, but it doesn't rely on the specific bodily
But it
functions of
fully
somebody.
relies on the functions of everybody
Well, no,
else.
because you can opt out. You can give
a
that to an
newborn
adoption
baby
agency.
relies on the functions of other adults,
right,
for
but,
sure.
but
if
it
not
doesn't
their
have
mother.
to deal with that biological mother. The mother can't put it
So
up for
you're
adoption
saying
if
that
they don't have the means in order
so
to
what
take
you're
care
saying,
of it.
let me make sure I say it back to you. You're saying the biological mother has the right to end the life of her biological child, but somebody else who's not biologically connected could end the life of a young child that's totally dependent on them physically.
No, I wouldn't say that.
Then
But-
what are you saying?
For my body and for the tissues that are in my body, there is always a space for me to make a choice for what is going to happen to my body.
I'd love to respond, if
Yeah.
I may. First of all, we are aligned that is absolutely horrific. We're aligned on that. And part of the work at Live Action is we do interview survivors of sexual assault, and we talk to survivors of sexual assault as well as children conceived via sexual assault. That's part of their story. And we're aligned that it's absolutely horrific. Where it sounds like we're not aligned is that I don't believe that two wrongs make a right. That if there is a horrific act of an assault, if I may just explain my position here, if there's a horrific act of assault, and a pregnancy results, and a new life is conceived, that ending that new life, giving that new human being the death penalty
the only thing that has happened is that there has been a fertilization of an egg.
If I may finish. So as an example, my friend Rebecca Kiesling or my friend Ryan Baumberger, two amazing people, conceived in brutal ways. And they go around and they say, I was that embryo, I was that fetus, I was that unborn baby. Do I not have a right to live? Should I have gotten the death penalty for the crime of my father? One more thing to say here.
That mother made a choice. That mother made a choice.
If I may, fully criminally responsible and put in jail for the rest of their life, in my view.
It's fun to say that, but the conservatives do not act like that. They act like it's entirely women's responsibility.
I can only speak for myself here and my organization. And we work with liberals, we work with conservatives, we work with Republicans, we work with Democrats. So we're a nonpartisan organization.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hey, before we go any further, we want to take a moment to say thanks so much to Straight Arrow News for powering the fact checks in this video. Straight Arrow News is an app and website that is on a mission to raise the bar on journalism in a time of media bias and mistrust. Their team of journalists believe that unbiased news should be the standard and not just the exception, so they report down the middle with facts, delivering news without bias, filter, or spin. Plus, their Media Mist tool allows you to discover news that's being underreported or not even reported at all by different sides of mainstream media. That's why we're so happy to be partnering with Straight Arrow News. The work they're doing gives us a complete picture of the news straight from our phones and tablets with their app. Go to san.com/surrounded or click the link in the description to check it out. By clicking that link, you're not just supporting this channel, you're also supporting a group of journalists that are raising the bar on news and focusing on serving you unbiased, straight facts. Thanks again.
Nice to meet you.
What's your name?
Adam.
Adam, nice to meet you.
Likewise. So when you say a child, I feel like you're kind of like preemptively loading the prompt with a lot of emotions. A child implies a person, and I don't believe personhood begins until around 22 weeks of gestation when, if you want to get into neuroscience, the thalamus connects to the cortex and the brain finally has a capacity to support a subjective experience. So why do you think that a fetus at 10 weeks, 8 weeks, for example, that has no capacity to be self-aware, to experience pain or anything else, should be valued equal to the bodily autonomy of a woman?
Okay. So a few questions for you to get to answer that.
Yeah.
Do you believe that a human fetus is a human?
It's a human, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your argument is that some humans don't have human rights, because my argument is that every human has a human right.
Sure,
and
this is, again,
is life.
this is getting into semantics, like the colloquial way we use the word human versus maybe a more scientific way. So obviously, a fertilized egg and beyond has human cells. The question is, when we talk about protecting that life, when does it become on the same level as the life of the mother who has bodily autonomy? And the answer there is 22 weeks, because again, prior to that, there's nothing, the car is on, but there's no driver in the car. And you don't apply traffic laws to an empty car, right? There has to be a subject present. It can't be a city for consciousness though, because the thalamus and cortex are connected.
So you're defining human life as consciousness. That's your definition of
Yeah,
human
the ability
life.
to have a subjective experience, consciousness, sure.
So
yeah.
if someone is unconscious, are they no longer a human?
They still have connections with their thalamus and cortex, whether they're under general anesthesia, whether they're asleep, whether
if
they're in a coma.
You would say they're still a human.
They still have the neural pathways connecting those parts of the brain.
If you're an unborn child before you've developed your brain fully, right? Because we all started life
Sure.
before our brain was developed, right?
Sure,
And
yeah.
then eventually, after a few weeks, we would develop our brain and then develop more capacities with our brain.
Yeah.
But that child, before it has developed its brain, has the natural capacity for a brain, because that's what will happen if no one kills that child.
When you say
first.
before it's developed a brain, do you mean prior to 22 weeks?
Prior to 22 weeks.
So-
And there are parts of, a lot has happened in the brain activity even before 22 weeks, as I'm sure you know.
Sure, but it's not sufficient to support a subjective experience. And when you talk about prior to 22 weeks, I would agree a potential life has some value, but it's not equal value to an actual person who has a right to bodily autonomy. If 200 years in the future, thanks to like medical technology advancements, we can safely remove an 8-week fetus from a mother, respect her bodily autonomy, and protect the fetus, I don't think anyone's going to call for abortion in that situation. But the reality is, respecting her bodily autonomy typically is mutually exclusive with keeping that pregnancy.
So make sure I'm tracking your argument here. You're saying that before this specific moment, when that person human rights.
Because that includes anyone we'd want to include, people that are asleep, people that are under general anesthesia.
And if they have a brain developmental disorder where they're missing part of their brain, and so
like
those
anencephaly, for example,
and those connections aren't there, would you say they're not a human anymore?
They'd still be a human, and like I said earlier,
but they don't have those brain connections that you're talking about.
I'm talking about personhood versus being a human.
Well, that's what I'm talking about too.
Yeah.
So I'm saying.
So I want to be clear with the terms here. When you say they're a human, I'm agreeing that even a fertilized egg is a human. Is it a person that should be given equal protections to a woman? So
are you saying that a person with a brain developmental disorder, like a significant developmental disability,
so like, are you talking about anencephaly, for example?
As an example, that they would not be a person
as I
in your view? It's okay to kill that person?
Well, no, that's not what I'm saying.
Then what are you saying?
As I said earlier, when there's a potential life, a partial life, you still give it some value. You have to take reasonable steps to protect it. If someone's
born,
what
steps would you give it to protect
if someone's born with anencephaly, there's no conflict there between the bodily autonomy of a woman and the person with anencephaly. The reason you do an abortion is not like, oh, I want to kill this fetus for fun. There's a conflict between the woman's bodily autonomy and the fetus developing. So if there's some way to resolve that and respect both parties, that would be great, but we don't have that kind of medical technology right now.
So the pro-life position is that if you are a human, you have human rights, regardless of how developed your brain might be, because some people have severe developmental disabilities, and that doesn't make them less of a human, or they have less.
I never said that it does.
Well, your argument actually infers that it does, actually, because it's saying that this particular level of developmental ability that your brain may have.
A series called Monster.
I'm not. Tell me about it.
In Monster, essentially you have a doctor, and this doctor has a choice. He has a choice to decide between either saving this young boy's life or saving the life of, I believe it's a sponsor of the hospital. He chooses to save the young boy's life. This young boy grows up to be the titular monster, worse than Hitler. Does that child have a right to life?
Yes, every child has a right to life.
Even if they turn out to be the most monstrous thing you could possibly produce. Even if their life means the life ending of everyone here. Does their life still hold?
I believe monsters are not born, they're made. So just because a child might eventually do something when they grow up and become an adult doesn't mean we have a right to kill them before that. I don't know what went on in their childhood or the choices that they made, but at the end of the day, everyone has a right to life, especially a child. They're innocent.
Let's say this child grows up and their life is miserable to the point of where they would want to end their life. And that's going to obviously leave some kind of ricochet effect. Everybody's going to be desperately devastated by that. Would you say that the parent who believes that that is where their child's life is going, does that child still deserve the right to life?
Are you saying that if a child is being abused, then we should be in support of killing that child?
Then let me be more specific. What would you say to me as someone who is a third-generation suicide survivor? So my mother.
And I'm so glad that you're here. I think your life is awesome, and I think every life is awesome.
Now, would you say the same if you knew that I was living in a domestic violence shelter where I consider taking my life frequently? Would you still say that I don't deserve to not only end that life, but especially somebody who did have an abortion, as somebody who had to make the decision to escape their abuser, their predator, their captor, as someone who was trafficked and pimped? So, would you still say that raising that child under those circumstances would have either made my life difficult, or would you still say that child has a right to life if I made the decision, I don't want to be tied to a predator for the rest of my life. I don't want to be tied to my captor for the rest of my life.
So if someone's dealing with horrible abuse, and I hope that didn't happen to you, but if you were dealing with I'm so sorry. That's absolutely horrible. You deserved much better. You deserve to be taken out of that, rescued from that, and given a better life. And that would be my hope for every person and what I'd want to work towards for every person, as opposed to saying death is the answer, or a suicide is the answer, or abortion is the answer. I think choosing life is always better.
Now, what would you say if I were to say,
Yes, thank you as well. Appreciate it. Hello.
Hi, Whitney Shanahan.
Whitney, nice to meet you.
So first, I'm a mother.
Awesome, congrats.
And I know you're a mother too.
Yes.
And you see the structural integrity of something that a building's, there's all these pieces that have set aside. Yeah. Someone goes and they vandalize that. Would they say, oh, you vandalized the building?
I hear what you're saying, but the analogy doesn't fit because
how does it not fit?
Because an unborn baby is not a blueprint.
Okay, it's not a blueprint. The genome, all the genetic makeups.
Your DNA is a blueprint, but the unborn baby is also made of cells, which are, like you said, the building blocks.
But it's not human yet, because you even said yourself that a level of awareness and consciousness is what defines humanity, which happens in the third trimester. And we see that actually 90% of abortions occur according to the Gut Macker Institute.
Are you saying the unborn child is not a human?
Pause.
Okay.
Hi, Evan.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. So my fundamental issue with a lot of pro-lifers is they have a misreading or a misunderstanding of why exactly we grant moral consideration to other humans. It is not, unlike your view, because we are simply of the human species and a live organism. Under your worldview, and correct me if I'm wrong, at the moment of conception, that you have a right to life, and that right to life is equal amongst all human beings. Is that correct?
At the moment of fertilization, yes, we all have
Sure.
an equal
And
right to life. When a single cell embryo,
Great.
so the science shows us at
Great,
the moment
great,
of
great.
fertilization,
that's
well, it's
fine.
important, a single cell embryo comes into existence.
Violations, which is what we're
it doesn't
discussing.
mean that the embryos are less valuable or that
Yeah.
the person in the room that I
Right.
didn't choose to save is less valuable. This is
Right.
really important.
But with
Just
respect
because
to
I would
rights
save-
violations,
but
I'm
this
going
is-
to walking back because you're not actually.
Can I respond?
You're not
Can I
directly
respond?
actually responding.
I am
though.
trying to, if I may,
Sure.
if I may. If I want to save, in your analogy, this newborn baby from being shot, I think is what your analogy is, which is
Sure.
obviously horrible, or save this tray of embryos, human embryos who are in the in vitro fertilization clinic, yeah, I would pick that newborn baby. That's not because the embryos are less valuable.
So then you've just
When the
contradicted yourself
Titanic's
because you said
but
that
just
you
to-
prefer a world in which there are less rights violations, but that would be a world in which there are more rights violations under your exact worldview because you
Well, I
conceded
think-
earlier
but
that at the
let's-
moment of
let's-
conception,
yeah.
we all have an equal right to life, which means if we have an equal right to life, all of those embryos have an equal,
to be
equal
clear,
rights to life, and that
I
means
mean,
there are more rights
to be-
violations under the
can I-
worldview
can
in
I
which
respond?
the tray is
Can I
destroyed
respond?
versus
To be clear,
the
if
baby.
there was a baby and it's like, go save that baby or go save these 10 men over there, I also might pick the baby. That doesn't mean that these
Sure,
10
but
men
I'm not
are not
asking-
more,
I'm not
are not
asking whether or
valuable.
not whether
and it
you-
doesn't mean that
I'm
the
not
10 men don't
asking-
have human
I'm
rights.
not
It's just that
asking-
this is a
That's
baby
fine.
right there
I'm not
that I
asking whether
wanna
or not
go
you
get,
have
so-
some personal more empathy towards
But I
a
think
baby
that's
or
what
from.
it's connected
but no,
to.
but
I think that's what it's connected
I'm
to.
specifically asking because we're discussing human rights as you put it.
So,
because
but
was
most,
the reasoning
most
based off of?
importantly, the 14th Amendment to our Constitution has something called equal protection under the law for all persons. And it says that no state has the right to deprive any person of life without due process under the law.
Also, liberty and
there's
property.
no due process for the unborn child in the womb. They're innocent, and they're a human being just like you and I. I
All right,
believe
let
they're
me
a
stop you
person
right.
under the law, and they have the right
true.
to live.
That's true. But there's also in that clause something called the due process clause.
Correct.
You cannot deprive an individual life, liberty, or property.
baby have due process before they're killed?
Wait. Substantive due process. All right. There's two different things. Liberty, right? We have to focus on the liberty aspect. Individuals have liberty to do things in their life, right? That the government cannot infringe upon. One of those things is the right to marry. You cannot limit it based on race, right?
But we don't
You
have the
cannot
right to
limit
kill,
it-
right? We don't have the right to commit
I'm
homicide
getting
or
there.
murder.
Liberty also means that you have the liberty to decide when you become a parent, right? That's what kind of Roe was based off of. It was the liberty to decide when individuals become parents.
If you're pregnant, is there a child that exists?
We had this conversation earlier. We're on the legal aspect, right? We're going to talk about Roe.
I want to talk about that because that's one of the reasons the pro-life position is that
But this isn't
if you are the
this is
parent
law.
of an
I
unborn
want to talk
baby,
about
you're not allowed to
substantive
kill
law
that child.
here, right? Substantive due process determined that we have a right to determine when we become parents under Roe v. Wade. The beauty about Roe v.
You got
Hey, welcome back.
Good to see you again. Mason,
Mason,
nice to see you again.
So, a couple quick questions first before we begin. Do you believe that the Constitution's inerrant?
That you mean it's perfect the way that it is?
Correct.
Well, I think that what is in the Constitution is good. I think it's possible and sometimes the right thing to do to add new constitutional amendments.
Yeah.
So that the Constitution can be more clear in who it's meant to protect and the rights that it's meant to protect. And that's what happened obviously with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. And that's why I think historically we have, back when the 14th Amendment was put in the Constitution, most of the country saw a child in the womb as a person.
So I'm glad that you admit that amendments are something that make the Constitution malleable.
Make it better, can make it better.
Right, absolutely. So
It's not undoing past parts of the Constitution, it's making it better.
Well, there are certain clauses within those amendments that will expand upon things that were unclear or had a little bit of murky areas. And I would say that if abortion was going to be something that was a constitutional right and amendment, you'd agree that even if it is part of the
my
Constitution.
argument, to be clear, is that abortion is
Well,
already unconstitutional.
I think you're trying to evoke an authority that
Under our
you wouldn't
existing
subscribe to
Constitution.
if abortion was to be added to the Constitution. So
I'm
this is
not sure what
something
you
where
mean by abortion added to the Constitution. What do you mean by that?
I'm saying if the right to privacy was again reinforced and bodily autonomy was added advocate to that right.
So
right
just to be clear,
privacy.
I support the right to privacy.
I can concede to you that an abortion is wrong, right? Let's just agree on the same moral framework that abortions are bad. The termination of a life is something that's bad. That doesn't necessarily mean that needs to be illegal. For all those Jordan Peterson fans out there, Jordan Peterson made this argument. Jordan Peterson specifically said that even if something is wrong, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that should be illegal. We would all agree that killing is wrong, but we understand just war theory that there are certain instances in which killing is something that's acceptable.
I see where you're going with this, and I agree with you, largely speaking. I think,
so when it comes to something like abortion, when it, again, is trying to supersede the right to bodily autonomy, this is not something that we can guarantee.
So
we can't guarantee to preserve that life in favor of making a woman make decisions.
The presumption at the heart of what you're saying is that a woman without abortion, women are going to die. I think that's the presumption. And so their rights are somehow in conflict, the right to life of the child.
I wouldn't say that women are going to die, but going through pregnancy is not a simple process.
It's not a simple process.
9 months of physiological changes.
But with good medical care, you can care for both the mother and the child. And so my view is that you should not pit their rights against each other, but we should care for both mother and child, both as patients. It's not that the child's more important than the mother. It's not that the mother's more important than the child. It's that we care for both patients.
Yeah, and
healthcare professionals can do that when they put in the work.
That's the beauty of having a pro-choice perspective, is because if women want to go through that, we absolutely should be providing them with what's necessary.
But that's an elective abortion that you're referring to. The woman is choosing it because
of it.
It is, and that's how we all started our life.
But it's
and
not
that's because the child has a right to live. Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
What's your name?
My name is Zach.
Zach, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So I come from the standpoint that the laws in the United States should represent the general public's opinions. And when you look at the bell curve, the majority, upwards of 70% of Americans believe that we have the right to abortions up to a certain point. Everyone has a different view on when that life becomes a life. But I think that it's so wrong to only cater to the very farthest end of the bell curve when you're cutting off the rights from so many women whose opinions are valid and who might have so many different reasons to get an abortion, economic, just they're not in the place to have a family.
There are often Supreme Court decisions that happen, that are made, that do not reflect the general poll consensus of the country. And this is also the story of part of our history, some of our worst human rights abuse as a country. If you had taken a poll of the Deep South, you would have found them during the time of slavery that they were for slavery. That was horrible, right? But you don't take a poll and say, well, you support slavery, so slavery is just. So that's why we live in a democratic republic that also has a judicial system that also looks at what is constitutional, what is not.
Starting at conception is so unfair to the women whose lives are actually being affected by these long-term decisions. I understand that from your perspective, you think that a woman should have the child no matter what because it's too difficult to decide like case to case or something.
Well, and we're big advocates for adoption too, because if they feel they're not in the position to be a parent,
if the child is going to be born without a brain, if the child, they can place the child for adoption. It's not fair to make a woman go through all that, and because it is permanent damage to a woman's body to bring that baby along for 9 months. Just for a lot of cases, the reason that they choose an abortion is for their safety or for their long-term health effects.
Do you know the reason for over 90% of abortions?
Why?
They have nothing to do with safety. They have nothing to do with abuse. They have nothing to do with health conditions. They're purely done. They're done for the convenience of the woman. And there's 1 million abortions a year, so it's hundreds of thousands of abortions that are done because the woman.
My belief is that the laws should be put in place.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I do believe that the decision should be between a doctor and the woman because those are the people who have the best interest for the woman.
Hello. Hi. What's your name?
Soraya.
Soraya. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Okay, so I'm not really. I do. I'm just curious then. If we ban it, how does that play out? Like, how does that look then? Let's say we ban it today. What does the next year, 5 years look like?
It's a really good question. It's one we think and talk about all the time. And in pro-life states, it's ones that they're wrestling with, right? Because they banned abortion in many states in this country already. Yeah. And it looks like a few things. First of all, I think we got to double down on resources for women. There are a lot of resources that exist, but sometimes women don't know that they exist and that there's people that want to help them. A lot of women don't know, for example, that with adoption, that there are literally over 1 million couples who would want to adopt a newborn baby, and you can actually pick and choose the couple that would adopt. You can pick and choose how much involved you want to be in that child's life if you choose adoption or if you choose parenting, that there are a lot of organizations that want to help. In California, there are hundreds of pregnancy resource centers that provide free confidential care to women before and after birth, people need to know that this stuff exists
I agree
so
with
that
that,
they can
yeah.
get the help that they deserve.
I don't actually disagree with that. I'm more
And then
curious,
also education on the trauma of abortion, the harm of abortion. I think that's also part of what's important
kind
for
of like
women.
to balance it out, right? Because right now it's very much like a, I guess, abortion-centric narrative, or it's like that's the way to go. So you kind of want to balance it out by saying, hey, actually, there's an alternate way of doing things.
Exactly.
What I'm more curious about is abortions will continue to happen.
That would ever be on the table
I
in
understand
my
that,
world.
but I think, yes, there should be penalties for people
So
that kill
what
other
do you
people.
think should happen to me? I had an abortion when I was 19. So what, in your mind, in your perfect world, what would happen to me?
So if abortion were banned now, I wouldn't want it to be retroactive for people that had abortions in the past.
No. I'm talking about, let's say I have one
Well, I think that's an
tomorrow.
important point.
Like, no.
If you, well, if you had an
We're not
abortion
talking
and it was
retroactive.
banned.
I'm talking about now because
Okay.
this is who affects people now.
Yeah.
So what do you think? If you think it's murder and you want to call it murder, why aren't you treating it like murder?
So you're saying
because what you do is actually villainize and shame women, and that has ripple effects throughout society.
So in this scenario, you're saying if abortion was banned and you went and had an abortion tomorrow, you're asking me what I think should happen.
I want to know. Do you think I'm a murderer?
Well, here's the thing. I would want to know, did you know that was a baby that you were killing?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Do you think it's a baby?
I'm aware of what I'm doing. I made
What
the
are you
decision.
doing? What are you doing?
I'm not letting my pregnancy go to term.
But what do you think that is? Do you think you're ending the life of a human being?
You know, I'm not here to
I think
debate
that's
that, though. What
important.
I'm talking
Because
about right
there's
now, we're talking about the Constitution and law. And in law, I don't even know.
But if you can let me finish, it's important. In our criminal statute, there's different kinds of penalties
You're
or
right, and
no
there's different
penalties.
types of
depending
there's different types
on
of murder too.
Depending on
Self-defense.
how
In the third trimester, it's
it depends on
it's killing
the
me.
amount
What do
of
you think should happen
intent.
then?
It depends
That's
on
self-defense.
It depends on the
isn't
amount
it?
of intent that goes.
In protecting a zygote at 10 weeks or 8 weeks, for example, because would you say that the First Amendment covers freedom of thought?
Yes, but back to the argument
prior to
at
22
hand,
weeks, they don't even have the capacity to have thoughts. So
well,
like, what
they
is
have
the...
a natural, again, you know the difference between active capacity and natural capacity.
Sure.
So with a natural capacity, that has to do with a skill that we haven't developed yet or we're not able to develop, but we have that natural capacity due to our human nature.
Sure.
Active capacity, we have the skill, we're employing it, right? If
You
you
don't
are,
have to be employing it. I have
clear,
the active capacity to jump right now, but I'm sitting in a chair.
Fair, that's true. So if you're before birth, your brain isn't fully developed yet, you have a natural capacity for reason,
Sure, so-
language, and all of those things. It's not active yet. Your
At 22 weeks,
human
there are-
value is not defined by your active capacities. Because
Yes,
if
it
we
is.
defined human value by active capacities, somebody who was the fastest runner, had the highest
Sure.
IQ, was the strongest person on the block, they would be more valuable and have more human rights
You can have
than
a
the person with a
gradient. You
disability.
can have a gradient of
But would
capacity,
you agree
but
with
still
that?
have a binary.
Would you
No,
agree that
no,
one is
because
not more valuable than the other?
I don't agree
They
with
have
the premise
same
because,
human
for
rights.
example, if I rub two sticks together, a flame is going to start eventually. After that ignition, it's a flame, whether it's a wildfire or a tiny spark. Prior to that, it's something else. So when you have
But if
the
there's a
sufficient,
spark, that's fire, right?
yes, and when you have
And
the
when there's a-
sufficient
and then
connections
there's a
in the
human
brain,
embryo, that's a human.
That's not the spark. When you have sufficient connections in the brain to sustain a subjective experience,
So
that's when that
I
spark
think you're
begins.
arguing from a position of what I would call ableism, utility for certain abilities. And I'm saying,
Give me
if
a
you
type
have
of
a
person
natural,
that is not encompassed by
well,
my
the baby with
definition.
anencephaly or hydrocephaly, we were talking about
Sure,
them earlier.
but
They're
do you
just
remember what I
as
said
much
earlier as well, which
well,
is
you
that
said
if
they
someone
were
is a
human.
partial or potential human, they should still be protected.
But
the
that
reason you
goes
have an
against
abortion,
your logic, though.
no, it
That is
doesn't.
that is a
I value an
self-refuting
acorn
position.
and I value an oak tree. They're not the
Because you're
same
saying
thing.
that
And I would
the-
never sacrifice an acorn for an oak tree.
You're saying they have the value with hydrocephaly, but then that's only after 22 weeks. But
It's not
even
the
though they
same
lack
level
the
of value.
same, they lack the
It's not
same
the same
synapses.
level of value. They don't have full personhood.
Good job.
Hello again.
Hello, Julia, right?
Yes. Okay. So you had mentioned that regardless if it is illegal or not, women are still going to get abortions. So how do you justify the fact
They'll
that
have far less if it's illegal. The abortion rate goes down dramatically when it's illegal.
they're not going to report if they're doing it illegally because there's going to be repercussions? So
But
why
we
not?
can we can prove that live births go up in states where abortion is illegal. That is the fact of what has happened after Dobbs v. Jackson, and some of the trigger laws went into effect and some states made abortion illegal. So we know more women are having babies. So even with unreported illegal abortions, live births are still going up.
Do you understand
the
that
law
people, when they know that abortion,
It's absolutely horrible that women, because of the color of their skin, are not getting good health care. I think that's ridiculous and horrible. So we are aligned on that. When you talk about your baby and you saw that baby as a clump of cells, you said it wasn't a baby to you, it wasn't a child, and you had that abortion, you have no regrets. Our feelings or our beliefs about other people don't change that other person, that other human's value. So I could have feelings or beliefs about my son, about a person I walk passed down the street, about anybody in this room, but that doesn't change whether they're good feelings, good beliefs, bad beliefs. That doesn't change that person's innate human value. And they have innate human value not because of their capacities, not because of their abilities, but because of their innate human nature that we all share. And human nature doesn't start at birth, doesn't start a few weeks or even a month before birth. It starts at the beginning of a human person's life, which is fertilization.
But that's your opinion. So there isn't actually scientific evidence that states that human life begins at conception.
There is a tremendous amount of scientific evidence that shows that. If you open any human biology textbook, you're going to find that the development process begins with fertilization of the human life.
What it says is that,
and also if you're in an in vitro fertilization clinic,
what it says
if you're a technician,
is that there is cell motion. My body made that decision for me.
I hear everything you're saying, but here's the reality. You're strong. You are the one, when you're pregnant, if I get pregnant, I've been pregnant now 4 times, I'm more powerful than that baby, right? Because I have the power to talk, walk, do whatever I'm gonna do, and that baby is completely dependent on me, right? Mm-hmm. And even when there's a newborn, totally dependent on everybody around them, if not their biological mother, whoever they're handed off to, right? It's incredibly important for a rule of law, for justice, for human rights, that we are especially careful to protect the rights of those that are dependent and weak. Because if we live in a society that just says the strong get to choose what they want because they can, that's not a just or a loving society. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm so pro-life. I'm so pro-life because that baby, you're right, they're totally dependent on the mother.
Absolutely.
They're completely unable to defend themselves, speak for themselves. And that's all the more reason why we as a civil and just society should care about their right to live and, by the way, help that mother. It goes 2 and 2, right? Because you can't just care for the baby and not care for the mother. You got to care for them both.
And when that is a viable life outside of my body, 100%.
Well, we should care at the beginning of human development. That's my position.
Yep, and human development.
And women who are pregnant need extra care too. It's not like you just get care when the baby's born. You should get extra care before.
Yes, they do.
Because you're carrying a new life.
While that is still in my body,